listening to Loving BDSM Podcast, episode 24. Hey everybody, Kayla Lords here. Today, let's discuss the red flags and signs of a bad dominant and what to do about them. Welcome to the Loving BDSM Podcast. If this is your first time listening, glad to have you. If you're back for another week, welcome back. Loving BDSM is produced every Friday for your kinky pleasure and education, and show notes are found at kaylalords.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. If you love what you hear, we'd love a good review on iTunes to help other kinksters find us. You can follow me on Twitter at Kayla Lords or stalk John Brownstone at southernsirsplace.com. All links are in the show notes. Does your business cater to the kinky with toys, videos, products, or services? You should sponsor the Loving BDSM podcast. Contact me, Kayla Lords, to learn more. Now, on with the show. For everyone who follows the show regularly, hi! You can't see it, but I'm waving at you because I'm a goofball. Anyway, you might have noticed that last week there was nothing, nada, zip, zilch, actual radio silence. Well, for once it wasn't me who was sick, it was John Brownstone. You know, the man who gives you intro and outro, yes, that's a term, music, and reduces as many awkward pauses and strange noises as possible in every episode. And when I say sick, I mean he was in the bed for 48 hours, unable to breathe through his nose, talk, or stand up without staggering. My job was to keep him hydrated and medicated. Asking him to prop himself up to edit an episode just seemed wrong somehow. So, if you noticed we were gone for a week, never fear, we're back. Or at least I am. And if this episode that you're listening to has all that music stuff, then you know John Brownstone is back too. Which reminds me, I really need to pin him down and bat my eyelashes until he records another episode of his own. So if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to hear from my daddy Dom on an upcoming episode, send them my way and I'll make sure he sees them. So anyway, as always, this week's podcast was inspired by things that are actually happening. And actually it was inspired over a month ago, but I never could seem to pull it all together. So a few weeks ago, before this episode, I wrote a bit of advice for Submissive Guide's Ask Anything column, and I kind of knew I had to share it with all of you. The person sent in a letter to the site, and nearly every line of her message about her dominant was a big, gigantic, awful red flag. If you followed me for any amount of time, you know I'm not the type to give concrete black and white answers on how to do the DS thing that we do. There's almost always a caveat about personal experience and preferences and consent and negotiation and how you set up your relationship. And quite frankly, both personally and professionally, I always try to find a shade of gray. Oh gosh, pardon the pun. And I don't like to give black and white answers because there's almost always an exception to almost always everything. But my reply, and yeah, it's in the show notes for you so you can see it for yourself, it was pretty simple and it was pretty clear and it was pretty black and white. My advice was to run as far and as fast as she could to get away from this guy. So this isn't the first time red flags and bad dominance have caught my attention or been the focus of anything. Early 2015, I wrote a blog post about it for the site, and it's still one of my most popular pieces. And why is that? Probably because it happens all the time. And submissives send in questions to me and to other people asking, is this normal? Is this okay? Is this right? Is this wrong? So it's a huge issue, and I want to address it here on the show for two reasons. So if you are submissive, you know the red flags when you see them and can hopefully avoid them. And if you're a dominant or you want to be one and you recognize your own actions or beliefs in this list, you can become more educated and stop doing that crap right now, whatever it may be. So if it makes anybody feel better, I am going to do an episode on the red flags that submissives give out to dominants over the next couple weeks. So no, this isn't a dom bashing party. I don't really like to do that kind of thing anyway. I would rather celebrate the good ones than talk about the crappy ones. But the reality is, you know, I'm not even bashing doms. I'm talking about assholes and wannabes and posers and people who can't bring themselves to become educated about what it means to be a dom. So it's not dom bashing, it's education. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. So you're going to notice that the list is directed at submissives with male dominance. Now, when anyone mentions the bad acts of a wannabe dominant, they are always referring to men. And it's not that I think female dominance can't be bad, it's just that I've never heard of women doing these specific things. And if they do, or if there are other bad actions and red flags and characteristics that bad female dominants put out there, I would love for you to share them with me. Either use the comments on the show notes page or just contact me directly, KaylaLords@gmail.com. The more information we share with one another, the better we are as a kinky community. And, just because I don't know about something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And if there are female dominants acting as predators out there, I definitely want to know about it because I want to help the submissives who may come across them figure out how to deal with it. So just keep that in mind. Now let's get into the list, and it is in no particular order, and I have realized as I've gone through this list several times that I go from just kind of assholey kind of things to actual abuse. So it can, some of the red flags are really serious. So here we go. Number 1 on the list, he demands that you call him sir or master or some other title from the moment you meet. Now, I'm not talking about people who have an honorific in their name, sort of. I know dominants and masters who call themselves, when you talk about them and to them, that is Master Mark, that is, Sir Richard. That's how they refer to themselves. Everybody. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the guy that's like, you will bow down to me and call me master. Oh, no, I don't think so. First of all, you are a submissive, not his submissive, and I would like you to repeat that to yourself as many times as you need to until you remember it. But, y'all, this guy isn't your anything, sir or otherwise, until you decide that he is. Now, I will advocate always for being respectful when dealing with anybody in the kinky community, and quite frankly anybody in life. But if you are submissive and you are dealing with a dominant or somebody you know is a dominant, be respectful. That's just good manners and shows that you're a polite submissive, especially if you want them to become your dominant one day. But you don't have to use a title just because they say so. The title is something they earn, and they earn it through your submission and your desire to call them that. And quite frankly, they might call themselves master, and you get into the relationship with them, and you're like, actually, you're daddy, you're sir, you're whatever, who knows. So keep that in mind when you get the random guy or the weird guy or the guy that you just met that demands a title. The next one is kind of funny to me that this happens, and kind of sad that people don't call these guys out as the assholes that they are. If this supposed dominant starts out introducing himself by sending you either a dick pic or some sort of command to do something to please him, you are dealing with a wannabe. Okay, that's not how dominants do it. They're not. Nobody should send you a dick pic without your consent. Like, that's just life, and a dominant who understands consent is not going to do that. They're going to get to know you. They're going to make sure that you want that. They're going to make sure that they know you. There's going to be a conversation, before they order you to do something, before they send you a picture of their anatomy, whatever. No, when you get that, you're not dealing with an actual dominant. And if you get that, just please delete it. The next one, it kind of goes along with that, but it can happen even after you've gotten to sort of know somebody a little bit. You get unsolicited instructions of what you're supposed to do for him, or tasks you're supposed to do, or how you're supposed to please him, and it's usually like right at that moment. Here's the deal. Did you talk about this list? Did you communicate, negotiate, consent? No? Okay, this is not for real. This is not what a dominant does or should do. And guess what? No, you aren't required to actually follow this list just because you really want to be dominated. I guess you can, if you're like, ooh, I just really want to be dominated. Okay. But please don't think that this person is a real dominant. They're playing, and playing is okay, but we're talking long-term DS relationships. We're talking trying to build something. This is not how this happens, okay? And if you don't like it, or if it makes you uncomfortable, you are free to tell this guy to fuck off. It's okay. It doesn't make you less submissive. The next one it's a biggie. It's a doozy. And it's not just a wannabe asshole dominant. This is abuse, okay? He ignores your hard limits. You need to get the hell out as soon as possible, okay? You don't just walk away, you fucking run. Hard limits are those for a reason. Those are the things you will not do. Are you allowed to change your mind at some point in the future? Abso-fucking-lutely. Is that person calling themselves a dominant allowed to just decide for you in that moment after you have clearly said at some point, no, I don't want this? No, they're not. That's abuse, okay? A real dominant they are gonna push your limits. When you're dealing with a dominant in a relationship, and I don't even mean sexual, I mean there's somebody that you play with on a consistent basis, you know them well enough to allow them to dominate you, to exchange power with them, they are going to try and push your limits. They're going to work hard on it. That's just kind of what they do. And it's good for us to push our limits. You expand your horizons when you do that. But you consent to that. You know it's kind of coming. You might not know how it's going to happen, but you know it's happening. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy that you said, you're not allowed to do that. I'm not okay with that. And they did it anyway. That is abuse, and you need to run from this person. The next one is equally as important, equally as scary, equally as dangerous. He disregards your safe word. This can happen in different situations. You're in a kinky scene and it's not overtly sexual. You're not having sex with him. But you safe word and he keeps going. That's bad. That's abuse. That's huge. That's awful. And it happens in sex, in relationships that use safe words. I mean, if you don't use a safe word, I'm hoping you're not kinky if you don't use a safe word, but if you're in a vanilla relationship, okay, no and stop are what you use to indicate you want something to stop. Well, in kink, we use a safe word. And if you're having sex and something happens and you safe word and they keep going, we've now moved into rape because you removed your consent and they did not honor that. Stoya and James Dean, two porn stars, unfortunately are an example of this. Late November 2015, Stoya came out on Twitter and accused James Dean of having raped her during their relationship. I believe her. It's hard for any woman, any body, it doesn't matter, male or female, to admit that they have been raped. But in porn, as a sex worker, most people are going to say, well, you get paid for sex, you can't possibly be raped. And that's not true. What struck me about the tweet that rocked the sex world, because she did it, like I said, on Twitter, was that she said in a tweet, I said no, I said stop, I used my safe word. Now, they were a BDSM kinky DS couple. That was part of who they were together. And that was shocking. That was awful. Because it's bad enough. Rape is bad. I've told my children, both boys, rape is the worst thing you can do to somebody. And I know I've just put rape above murder. I think it is. And in kink, when we talk so much about safety and consent, for a safe word to be ignored by somebody who's supposed to know better, that's awful. And yes, I will link to it in the show notes. If it happens to you, God, if it has happened to anybody who's ever listened, I'm so sorry. But if they won't listen to your safe word in non-sexual play, get out, because they will disregard your safe word in sexual play. I have no doubt about that. Here's the deal. I'm just going to put this out there because I know there are some dominants who say they do not play with a safe word. I'm not cool with that personally. I find that dicey, but I'm trying not to be too judgy about it because there are couples who say we don't have a safe word. Okay. And I know that there are some who say I don't need a safe word because I'm watching so closely. The moment the reaction changes, I'm going to stop. And I hope that's the case. I know that there are people out there who feel that way. Here's the deal. As a submissive, especially if you're new, if you play with a safe word, guess what? Your partner at that point plays with a safe word. They might only play with a safe word with you, but they play with a safe word. So if you are negotiating a little kind of, ooh, I want to do this and let's get kinky. And you say, okay, my safe word is, pineapple schmoopsy pants. And they say, well, I don't play with a safe word. Then you say, then you don't play with me. And it's that's it. Okay. If you need a safe word to feel comfortable, and I highly, strongly, majorly encourage you to have a safe word, then they have to respect that. So just keep that in mind too. But yeah, like I said, the James Dean Stoya thing, I'll link to an article, and if you Google it, if you hadn't heard about it, there's all kinds of stuff. It's crazy, and yes, I believe her. Let's see, the next one, a little less serious, because it got really heavy in here for a second, didn't it? Lies. Lots and lots of lies. Now, I know there are people who say, and they believe, that everyone lies, and that's, in a sense, that's true. I mean, think about it. Some random person goes, how you doing today? And you say, fine. Well, you're not fine. Your dog died, and your car broke down, and you lost your job. But you don't tell that to a stranger. So yeah, there are white lies. My experience, though, the really good dominants, and I'm not even just including John Brownstone, I mean, other dominants I have met in the lifestyle, online and in person, they are honest to a fault, okay? They're going to tell you things you don't want to hear because they really just don't lie. Does this dress make me look fat, Daddy? Why, yes, baby girl, it does, okay? So here's the thing about lies. How can you communicate openly and honestly if you lie about things, big and small? Small lies, it's more of a consistency thing. Are they lying about every small thing? Why? Because they're afraid of dealing with the fallout of having spoken the truth? Well, that's not a very dominant quality to avoid confrontation and the truth. But then there's the lies about the big stuff. And one too many lies about the big stuff, that should be a deal killer, okay? We play in extremes in the kinky world. You have to know you can trust the person you're playing with to do as they say they will do, to have integrity, to be honest with you. And if they can't be honest on the everyday little stuff or some of the big things because they don't want to hurt your feelings or they don't want to deal with your anger or your emotions or whatever their reason may be, and there are a million reasons people lie, how do you trust them in kink? How do you trust them with power over you? So just be very leery of somebody who calls themselves a dominant and lies, just lies in general, okay? This other one has a lot of different ways. The next one on the list, has a lot of different ways it can play out. And there are some common ones I've seen, so I'll refer mostly to those. He thinks more about his pleasure than your own. Now, caveat, because you know me, there's a caveat to everything. I'm not talking about you have given up control of your orgasms to your dominant. John Brownstone controls my orgasms. He decides when I'm allowed to and when I'm not. Now, I have a lot of freedom. I'm allowed to masturbate when I want to, for as many orgasms as I want. The rule is I have to tell him about it. Okay. Because if you run a meme called Masturbation Monday, which I do, you kind of should masturbate, and I wasn't, and so this is what we did. But any other time, if I want to have an orgasm, I have to ask for it, and sometimes he says no. And I'm sexually available to him at all times, and by at all times, I mean at all times when I am healthy. Because if I'm sick, even he's not coming at me. But that's not what we're talking about here, okay? Because in that situation, in what he and I negotiated, I'm going to get some pleasure. I might get pleasure out of the fact that I'm being used for a sexual purpose, because that's something we enjoy. Or I know that eventually I'm going to get the orgasm that I want or I need, or I'm going to get something else that makes me happy. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the asshole who gets off and then looks at you and goes, "Did you get off?" Or ignores you, or doesn't pay attention when you say, "Ooh, I really needed this," or "Ooh, that didn't really work for me," okay? When they're not concerned about your pleasure at all, that is a problem. How you negotiate how you will get your pleasure in your DS relationship, that's on you, okay? You can do that any way you want. That works for both of you, okay? But you should still get your needs fulfilled. You should still get pleasure out of it. And there are some guys out there who call themselves dominants, and they think that you are there for their pleasure and that they don't have to worry about you. That's not cool. That's not what I would consider, quote, real. And I hate to use that word, but it's the best word I've got. Good. Let's not call it real. Good dominance. That's not good dominance. Okay. Now, the refrain I hear most commonly under this sort of category, what they say to their submissive, these wannabe doms, they say, "Well, I'm allowed to have as many sexual partners as I want, and I can fuck who I want, when I want. You are not allowed to do that, and you are to be available for me whenever I want, and I don't want to hear you complain about it." Yeah, no, that's not okay. You can negotiate your relationship to be open, non-monogamous, poly, whatever, or to be very monogamous. John Brownstone and I are working on some of that ourselves right now, and we have changed how we define our relationship a little bit, but it is through common, what's the word I want? We've communicated, we've negotiated, we've discussed it, we are constantly discussing it, and we are refining it. Okay, this is not that. And any of you who have gone through it where the guy's like, "I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do, and you just need to be around naked waiting on me," yeah, you know that's not cool. And if you have to send an email to somebody and go, is this okay? Guess what? It's not. I'll just go ahead and tell you before you send that one to me in an email. You can send anything you want to me in an email, but if you type out, "He told me I'm not allowed to see anybody else, but he can see whoever he wants. Is that okay?" If you have to ask me, I'm going to just tell you right up now, straight up, no, it's not. So, be wary of the guy who does not think he is supposed to give you pleasure in your sexual DS relationship, or just your kink fetish side of your relationship, or in whatever way, okay? Because no, that's not dominance. It's just not. Okay, the next one, he makes you feel bad about yourself, and this is another sign of abuse. And I don't know, when I was making this list, I've now recorded this episode 3 times, just to give you some inside baseball there. I don't know why I have not reordered these, but maybe it's because I need to lighten it up and then go heavy again and then lighten it up. I don't know. The next couple are pretty heavy in there. They are signs of abuse. It's not just, oh, a red flag, this guy's not really dominant. He's not, but it's also signs of abuse. So I want you to sort of really, if you come across these, I want you to take them as seriously as they are. This one is about your self-esteem and how he makes you feel about yourself, okay? He makes you feel bad about yourself. And no, I am not talking about humiliation play and humiliation fetish in a scene or as part of your relationship. That is something separate. It has to be negotiated, communicated, and discussed very thoroughly on an ongoing basis. You don't just have a conversation, hey, I'm into humiliation, will you pee on my face, and then never talk about it again. That's not how this works. On a side note, to humiliation play, if anybody's interested in it, I have a little bit of a fetish, very, very light. I don't like anything too degrading. But John Brownstone is very careful with me, and he won't even go as far as I think I would let him, because he wants to make sure I am healthy and whole and sound, both mentally and emotionally. That's the thing with humiliation play. If you go down that road, you have to tread very carefully and very lightly. Do your research, know the person that you are humiliating very well, and be aware that you never know what you might trigger. They might say, call me all kinds of mean names, call me a fat pig, call me this, call me that, I can take it. And then at the wrong time or the wrong moment or in the wrong tone, it reminds them of something that happened, or it makes them feel a way they didn't expect, and you're going to need to be ready to deal with that. And aftercare is huge in humiliation. Aftercare is huge every time, but it's really big in humiliation play. And if you want to go that route, it's just my little thing. Just do your research, take your time, go really slow, stop the moment before he or she safe words, stop the moment as a dominant you get nervous about it, okay? But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the soul-sucking, self-esteem shattering bullshit that makes you feel less than human and unworthy of love and affection. That is not what a good dominant does in DS, in a relationship. As a submissive, both of you really, but I'm talking to submissives here, you're supposed to be built up by this relationship, not torn down. And there are some players in the lifestyle who their philosophy is they tear down the submissive down to bare basic bones of nothingness to build them back up. But you know what the goal is? To build you back up so that you are confident and you are happy and you dream big and you achieve your goals and you are a better person because you have this fulfilling relationship. If you feel bad about yourself and it's not humiliation play and you're with somebody who just makes you feel awful and has no care about your mental or emotional well-being, that's scary and that's bad, and you need to get away from that person. Now, sometimes it's just they're insensitive assholes. Well, if they're insensitive assholes, they're not doing very good on the dom thing there either. Again, unless it's a fetish, unless it's play, unless it's how you play and you've negotiated that. But if they just make you feel bad about yourself, you've got to get out of there. That's a bad sign. That's all I'm going to say. Now, the next one is a scary bad sign, and it's one I almost experienced myself, and say almost because, I'm a bitch from hell and I fought back. And it's real, and it's a sign of abuse. It's when you are with somebody who tries to isolate you from your family and friends. Now, let's get real here for a second. There are people in our lives, family and friends, who are bad for us, okay? Sometimes we recognize it, and we don't think we have any choice. We have to, they're a parent, they're a sibling, whatever they are. And we don't feel like we have any choice. And sometimes we don't recognize it because we just really love that person, friend or family, and we want to see the best in them. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about here. Because quite frankly, a good dominant, when you're in that situation, they're going to do their best to support you through that. And that's going to come in different ways. That's going to be by being there for you when you don't have a choice and you have to be around those people. It's going to be by telling you, I don't think these people are good for you. And yes, they will encourage you to step back. And it's supporting you when you decide you've had enough and you are stepping away from those people. Okay. I have a friend who is in a DS relationship. She has really bad experiences with her family, and she finally made the decision, I can't do this anymore. I'm not coming for Thanksgiving. I'm not coming for Christmas. You're not part of my life. You are so damaging to me and potentially my family. I'm not going to stand for it. She's a very strong woman, and I adore her. And her dominant said, I support you. I agree with you. First of all, I agree with you. I see it. But even if I didn't agree with you, I support you. And this is what you need to be happy and healthy, and I'm here with you. That is a good, wonderful thing. The fact that you're in that situation is awful, but to have that kind of support, that's what it's supposed to be about. No, what I'm talking about here is when you've got a loving family and you've got good friends and your wannabe dominant tries to isolate you. Okay? They're jealous of your relationships. They don't like you going out. They accuse you of awful things when you're at your mom's house and you're getting accused of, having orgies in the backyard or something. Here's the deal. That is absolutely a sign of abuse. I don't know the technicalities of whether it's a sign of physical abuse or potential future physical abuse. I do know it's a sign of mental and emotional abuse. When I dated my now ex-husband, and very early on in our marriage, he tried this with me, and I fought him, and I did what I wanted to do, because I do what I want, unless I call you daddy, but we fought like cats and dogs. Why I married him, I'm not sure. I think I was meant to have my children, and that's probably because it's the only good thing I got out of him, other than a much stiffer backbone than I had before I met him. But it's a sign of abuse. It's not okay. That's not just bad dominance. That's bad peopling. That person who has such low self-esteem themselves, and they're so concerned that you're going to leave them because you went to hang out with your family, that they try to isolate you from your family. You need to do what you can to get that person out of your life. This isn't an uneducated or bad dominant. It's abuse. So just putting that out there. And now I really got heavy, didn't I? Wow. I'm sorry. Let's lighten up a little bit. This next one makes me laugh because if I'm not your submissive or your friend or your, whatever, I'm kind of a bitch, and I don't really mean to be a bitch. I have a really great resting bitch face. I look serious all the time, even when I try not to. And I kind of don't take crap from people anymore the way I did many years ago. And part of it is because I do have a stronger backbone and I do have a lot more confidence. And guess what? I got some of that from being in good DS relationships. So this one makes me laugh, but it is really common. And I get messages from submissives who are worried because they've been told this. So I'll put it on the list for that reason. He tells you that you're not a, quote, real submissive because you have your own opinions. I'm trying not to laugh, so I had to sigh. Because this is frustrating, and I hate it, and I hate that anybody would believe it, because it feels like a basic thing to tell people, but I think they forget. Here's the deal. In a DS relationship, you have your own opinions. Whether you're in a DS relationship or not, you are entitled to your own opinions. Here's the difference, though. In a DS relationship that you have communicated, negotiated, and consented to, how you express those opinions could easily be different from the average non-kinky vanilla relationship. In my relationship with John Brownstone, I just say what I need to say, and it's just in a respectful tone. I can say whatever I need to say when I need to say it. Now, there are times he might say this is not a good time, and unless it's important and like life-threatening, I have to clam up and wait for the right time and just let him know, hey, we need to talk. But by and large, I can just say what I need to say. I know people who they literally say time out because they need to express an opinion that they don't feel is going to be taken well by their dominant partner, and they don't want the power exchange to get in the way of the opinion. So that's how they do it. Other people, they set aside specific times of the day to talk, to say whatever they need to say. Other people write in a journal that their dominant reads, and then they discuss it. For a long time, early in my relationship with John Brownstone and in my former relationship with the person before him, I wrote it down. I emailed it. I made a commitment that I would never blog about an issue that I had not discussed with my dominant first, but writing is easier for me. So I would send emails. Poor John Brownstone. There have been times, even recently, even as like in the past 6 months, he's gotten a handwritten letter for me because I couldn't say it because I was afraid of how it was going to come across or that it was going to hurt him. And so I wrote it, and I could edit myself, and I could be as eloquent as I like to think I am in my head. But here's the deal. I express my opinion. As a submissive, you have every right to have an opinion. You have every right to express your opinion. How you express it will be different based on the relationship you create, okay? So anybody who tells you that by having an opinion you're not a real submissive is an idiot. And if you are somebody out there who has said those things, you might be a perfectly nice person, but I'm telling you right now, when you said that, you're an idiot, okay? Now, the other flavor of real submission and, the opinion thing, you're too independent, you're too aggressive, you're not willing to do what you're told by somebody who calls themselves a dominant. Though that's usually the mark of, I would imagine, somebody who really doesn't know what they're talking about and they're just trying to get a rise out of you. Do not take those things to heart, okay? There's such thing as real submissive, and the next one covers true submissives, which is just a variation, and there's no such thing as a true submissive. So let's get on to that one. This one, the first time I heard it, I kind of went, well, that's weird. And then I heard it several times from different people. So apparently this one's out there, and I added it to the list. He tells you to research and learn on your own, by yourself, okay, without him, what it means to be a, quote, true submissive. And that if you don't learn that, he can't be with you. What? What? I think my first reaction to that was, what in the actual fuck? That was how I responded to that, because that doesn't even make any sense. So let's cover a few things. First of all, if that person tells you that, here's what I want you to automatically assume about that person until they prove otherwise. They don't know anything about DS, and they need you to go learn it and then teach them. Okay, that's my very first thought. They don't have a clue, and so they need somebody else they're too lazy to go learn. So they want you to learn and then tell them about it. And then maybe it's a smokescreen. They figure you'll go away and never come back, and they don't actually have to be your dominant. I don't know, but if they're serious and they say, "Oh, we can't do this until you go get yourself educated," bullshit. Okay, on that level specifically, DS is a constant learning experience for everyone involved. No matter how experienced you are, whether you're in a relationship or not, okay, there's always something new to learn, because every single person is different. So every person you encounter in DS, there's something to learn from them. And when you are in a relationship, there's something to learn from one another all the time. Okay. And it's not always big stuff. It's not always earth-shattering stuff. It could be that, oh, he makes that sound when I put my tongue there. Okay. File that information away for later and pull it out when you need it. So anybody who thinks that you just go to one place and you learn all there is to know about DS or submission or whatever, and then that's it, and they're done and you're done. No, it doesn't work that way. I know people in the lifestyle 25, 30 years, and they admit, I still have things to learn. I still learn things about myself, about my partner, about kink, about a fetish, about something I want to try. It's a constant learning experience, and I expect uneducated dominants not to know that, and that's fine, because you don't really know until you get into it, but a bad dominant is the one who thinks that they truly are done, and they have nothing else to learn. That's not cool, okay? Now, let's talk about this true submissive thing. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Oh, God, and it annoys me. No such thing, okay? There's no mold that we fit into. There's no litmus test. There's no questionnaire we have to take. There's no obstacle course to run where you earn a submissive badge, okay? It doesn't work that way. You want to know how you become a submissive? Here's how I did it. I chose a partner that exhibited the traits of a dominant who felt they were dominant. Okay, that does help. I don't even think that's necessarily a requirement, but okay. And then I gave up control of part of our relationship to that partner. I exchanged power with them. I gave them my power. Ta-da! Like magic, I was a submissive. Okay? Even using titles with one another. Daddy, sir, baby girl, pet, little one, whatever you call one another. That's not even a requirement. That's a choice you make, and a lot of us make that choice, and it does help, and it does feel good, and it's great, but it's not a requirement. Okay? I mean, think about it. I can't call him daddy all the time. It doesn't make me not his submissive all the time. So, when you hear that, if you hear that, God, I hope you don't hear that, but if you ever come across somebody who believes that, call bullshit, and move on, because that's not how it works, and you're a submissive the moment you decide to submit, and your partner becomes your dominant. they can be a dominant without you, but they become your dominant when you submit to them, when they consent to taking control and when you consent to giving control. And that is it. Okay. So this true submissive thing, yeah, bullshit, crap, total crap. Okay, I gotta calm down a little bit. I'm trying to keep it low key. It's gotten really heavy, but my blood pressure keeps going up and I'm gonna pop a vein if I'm not careful. So let's move on away from the red flags. We're done there. I think I've probably given you enough information for a lifetime there. So what do you do about these people who call themselves dominants who do these things? Most of them, if you haven't already figured out, are in the online space, because it is very easy to put up a fake account and find some sexy kinky picture online and call that your avatar and give yourself some domly dom sounding name and use some of the right words and ta-da, you're a dom. Okay, you're a dominant. What? They're kind of the bane of our existence in the lifestyle. Some of them can be very convincing. And you think, oh, I'm dealing with a real dom and this is how it is. Look for any of those red flags, those signs that I have listed. They are listed on the show notes page, so you can actually refer back to them. Please use them. Because they might be subtle and they might say the right things and then they might finally say the one thing that's not right and then you get the clue. Okay. So if you come across them in the online world, here's the deal, submissives out there in the world who have got it in your head you're supposed to be meek and mild. Do I sound meek and mild to you? Because I'm not. You can be meek and mild if you want to be. But here's the deal. You can be proactive in dealing with these wannabe doms, okay? I know I'm quite Southern. I don't know if anybody's figured that out yet. And the queen of the obvious. Anyway, I was taught from the cradle that to be bad, to show bad manners, to be ill-mannered was like one of the worst things you could do. And I get that a lot of us are taught that regardless of where we're from. Bad manners are just like the worst thing ever. You don't have to be polite to somebody who's an asshole, especially when they approach you online and you don't know them. So you can be proactive. You don't have to reply to a message that you do not solicit, especially. There's no obligation. You can ignore anybody you need to ignore, especially if they offend you or they're disgusting or they've sent you that crazy dick pic and demanded that you call them master. You can ignore them. I ignore, delete, and block all the time. Tumblr is probably my worst. And even then, I don't get a lot of that. I'm not quite as active on Tumblr as I used to be. Twitter is the other one where it happens. And it happens in different ways and not just kinky ways, but you can ignore people and you can block them. Now, if there's somebody that you thought was okay and you start a conversation with them, you're like, oh, okay, this guy might be cool. And then they turn creepy, crazy, bad dom on you. Guess what? You can and should ignore them. And you can and should tell them to stop and tell them to leave you alone. And don't be surprised. Anybody who's been in the online space long enough, especially a woman, maybe it happens to men, but I know it happens to women. The moment you tell them to stop or that it's inappropriate or you don't appreciate it, you will probably get back vitriol and disgusting anger and whatever. Yeah, I know it happens. Guess what? You don't have to keep following them. You don't have to keep being friends with them. Delete, block, and report. Because if it turns into harassment and they won't leave you alone, you absolutely should report them. Now, outside the online space, when you're in a relationship, it gets trickier. I hope nobody saw all of these red flags and signs and got into the relationship anyway, but as somebody who married a guy that was emotionally abusing her, maybe I shouldn't talk. It does happen kind of easily, unfortunately. So if you're in the relationship and it happens, and if you hear background noise, I don't know if the microphone will pick it up. My phone just rang and it sounds like the Doctor Who theme song from the Matt Smith years, just so you know. Anyway, weird aside. Anyway, if you're in a relationship, it's harder, and I get it. But as a submissive, you are free to end the relationship at any point. You are allowed to withdraw your consent. When you exchange power, when you consented to the control, that's not forever unless you want it to be forever, okay? You don't have to wait for him to tell you that you're free. You don't have to wait for him to release you. You can walk. Okay. Now, if he doesn't listen, if he was ever acting as a dominant, he isn't now. Now it's abuse, okay? Because you've withdrawn your consent and he is now violating your consent. And so he needs to be treated like the abuser that he is. And if that means getting the law involved and calling the police, you do what you need to do, okay? Your physical, emotional, and mental well-being really are that important. And you are not stuck in a bad relationship because you consented to the power exchange. That relationship only exists as long as everyone involved consents to it. And the moment you stop consenting, there's no relationship, okay? Now, I'm not going to pretend that getting out and leaving is easy and simple. It's not. It's hard. And depending on how entangled and enmeshed in each other you are, it can get really complicated. You know, your finances might be intermingled. You might be living together. You might have kids together. I mean, there might be all these reasons why you can never completely get this person out of your life or why it takes a long time. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, okay? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do whatever you need to do to protect yourself. You have the right to be safe and healthy. And that doesn't stop because you're submissive and he's dominant, okay? They're only your dominant as long as you're willing to submit to them. In the show notes, I have linked to both the US and the UK domestic violence hotlines. I couldn't find a good resource. I know it's out there and I couldn't find it. I know there's a resource for other countries. If anybody has that, shoot me an email or comment in the show notes page, because that might be how you need to get help. Or maybe you're starting to think, oh God, have I been abused? I didn't know. I mean, I was divorced. I was going through my divorce process and somebody pointed out, based on the things I was telling them and what they knew about abuse, that what had happened to me in parts of my relationship with my ex-husband were abusive. And so I didn't even realize it until after the fact. And in some people's case, sometimes that happens. And you're like, oh God, I didn't think about that. I thought that's how these things went. Well, no. So I want you to have access to the help if you need it. So I do have that in the show notes. Now that I made that really heavy and kind of scary and depressing, and I'm sorry, here's the overall deal. If it's not a scary situation, it's just a crappy relationship kind of situation, when you see red flags or you feel like something isn't right, you have to speak up and take action, okay? Sometimes that action is walking away. Most of the time it's going to be walking away. And I know that's harder than it sounds. I mean, not even just the whole entanglement in a relationship, it's the overwhelming need you probably have to submit, that burning desire that I'm going to lose my mind if I'm not on my knees and serving somebody who is controlling me and dominating me. And there's a technical term for that. When I say technical, it's not in the dictionary as far as I know, but it's a term we use in the lifestyle. It's called sub-frenzy, and I'll link to that in the show notes too. And it's real, and it's, the hormones and the endorphins and it's powerful stuff, and it hit me, and I didn't know what it was until after I read a definition, and I was way out of it. I'd been out of it for a while, but I recognized myself completely in it. And we will do really stupid things in a need to submit. And what I will tell you is this, and it's pretty simple, okay? If you would not stay in a vanilla relationship over the way you're being treated by this person who calls themselves a dom, you don't stay in a DS relationship, okay? Because you can be treated as awful as you like, as long as you consent to it. If you like being used as furniture, or you like being tied up, or if you like being ignored or humiliated or used or whatever, and you enjoy that and you consent to that, you can have that relationship. But if that is not what you consent to and you wouldn't stand for it from a non-kinkster, you don't have to take it from somebody just because they call themselves a dominant, okay? And it really is that simple. And I think the bottom line that most people forget in any relationship, kinky or otherwise, is that it really is, hard as it may be to believe, it is better to be alone than stuck in a bad relationship. I don't care what flavor it is, okay? I don't care how kinky you are or not kinky you are. Alone with 17 cats is better than a shitty relationship that makes you feel bad about yourself, that does not fulfill you, that does not lift you up, that does not make you a better person, okay? And that is all the stuff that DS relationships are supposed to do as well. So I'm going to stop ranting. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, God, if you are still with me at this point, I'll love you forever. This is my third time recording it because I have had some serious technical issues. I've got to get those fixed. So I'm ranting and I'm getting real deep and heavy and I'm trying not to. And I'm going to stop for now. And I swear if this third recording does not work, I'm going to record Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and call it a podcast episode. Because I don't think my emotional state can stand talking about this for a fourth time, because it is pretty heavy. To my dominant listeners, I need you to know I love you, okay? Assuming you're not a poser or a wannabe or an abusive asshole, y'all are tops in my book. Even if your kinks aren't my kinks, even if I would not be your submissive, because personalities don't work, I appreciate you for what you are, okay? And I don't enjoy what some people call dom bashing. But if you think about it, first of all, I'm not bashing the doms, I'm bashing the assholes. And if submissives aren't educated about what the bad doms look like, they don't know what the good ones are when they have them, because they think that that's what submission is. And I have a feeling we lose a lot of people to the lifestyle because they have too many run-ins with the really shitty ones, and they don't know to hold out for the good ones. They don't even know the good ones exist, okay? So if you were like, oh God, is being a dom is, okay, no, don't worry, your turn's coming. I've got some things to tell submissives that they need to get straight on and do right. And they have their own red flags and things they get really, really wrong. And we're going to talk about those in an upcoming episode. So your turn's coming. Don't worry. So now that I have spent 46 minutes minimum discussing shitty doms or shitty people who call themselves doms, let's call it that, I'm gonna sign off and remind you guys to keep it kinky, and we'll see you next week for hopefully a lighter hearted topic. Love you guys.